Hi, my name is Daniel Shai, and I suffered from chronic fatigue and insomnia for over 3 decades. In this video, I want to discuss with you how to cope with the symptoms of chronic fatigue. Of course, none of this is medical advice. This is just my experience of recovery and what really helped me to feel better. Now, what we're gonna learn here is something different from what most of you have likely heard regarding CFS and ME. This approach is really for those who have maybe tried everything already in the medical field and maybe even certain types of therapies and nothing really worked. And the one thing that perhaps they weren't ever told to consider is the power of our perception to affect the body. There's a fundamental truth that when we change the way we respond to our experience changes. This actually also works with fatigue, and I was astonished to discover it because it's something that I had heard before, but I couldn't believe that it could be applied to fatigue. Really, what we have to do is kind of shift our relationship to this unpleasant experience. Instead of trying to avoid it, we have to actually allow it. Maybe I've tried everything, but I haven't tried welcoming. I haven't tried this approach that doesn't avoid and actually doesn't even try to fix. I mean, this is kind of weird and counterintuitive to allow fatigue, to allow the symptoms, to allow something so unpleasant. We want to retreat from it, but actually there's something called exposure therapy, which works rather well for many conditions. And the idea in exposure therapy is to expose yourself to the thing that you're afraid of, right? And we're in a sense afraid of the fatigue because of the unpleasantness that comes with it. And like I said, all the symptoms that come with it. But when we expose ourselves to it and then show ourselves that it's actually not a danger, the system begins to rewire itself back to safety. We need to understand the difference between a real threat and a perceived threat. Obviously, a real threat is, say you're walking in the forest and there's a bear right in front of you and the system gets into fight or flight, it's screaming danger. There's a real threat for the body's life. Now, the thing is, with a perceived threat, and we have so many of this in modern society where the system reacts with a fight or flight response or freeze, but there's no actual bear. And what I'm saying is that fatigue and its symptoms is one of these perceived threats. For the brain, the survival machine, it doesn't matter if it's a real threat or a perceived threat, it reacts with fight, flight, or freeze, and it basically is saying, danger, danger, something we need to fix. And this approach that I'm offering here is so counterintuitive because it's actually saying, instead of going with that and saying, yes, danger, let's fix it or let's avoid it, right? Let's fight it or let's flight from it, right? Then instead of doing that, what we're doing is letting it arise. But now we're really checking, is this a perceived threat or a real threat? Am I in real danger? Now you have to be careful to watch the thoughts go and say, of course I'm in danger because I won't be able to function, because if I won't be able to function, then that will happen, and then that will happen, and then later on I'll feel this way, and then. And I want us to, just for a moment, if you're open to this, just be in the moment, right? When you're feeling fatigue and its symptoms and the unpleasant, of course it's unpleasant, try to not run nor fight. Just befriend and welcome and invite how you're feeling and genuinely question, am I in real danger right now, right? And we're, in a sense, afraid of the fatigue because of the unpleasantness that comes with it. And like I said, all the symptoms that come with it. But when we expose ourselves to it and then show ourselves that it's actually not a danger. The system begins to rewire itself back to safety because fatigue and the symptoms that accompany it are not a real threat. They're a perceived threat. And herein lies the entire difference. Now, why is this important? Because when we begin to do this over and over again, it begins to retrain the brain that there's actually no threat. And guess what? When the brain doesn't perceive fatigue and its symptoms as threats in themselves, the system calms down. The anxiety around it calms down. The fear calms down. Safety returns. Consider that a lot of the fogginess and a lot of the symptoms that come with chronic fatigue are really a result of a nervous system that is in a state of battle. So when the brain isn't responding to the moment as though it's a threat, the fatigue and its symptoms begin to gradually lift. I hope that makes sense, because that's exactly what happened here. And it's very, very important to emphasize here that the idea is then to not avoid life, but to feel this discomfort, but then change the way you respond to it. And again, as the brain realizes, oh my gosh, this is not a real threat, we're safe, everything calms down, and your natural built-in ability to function begins to work. So I hope this really helps, and I hope you stick around so that we can unravel more of all of this in the other videos. Be gentle with yourself, be kind to yourself. It's very, very important. And if you wish to connect, there are details below. But really, I am here to give the support that I wish I had when I was going through it. It feels like nobody understands what chronic fatigue really is and how to move through it. And so I really think sharing my experience might be valuable to some. Of course, not all are going to resonate, but whoever does, it means the world to me. All right, take good care, and I'll see you in the next one.